That's Queen, and Keep Yourself Alive, and it opens up a very special hour on Sounds of the 70s when Brian May will guide us through not only all of the top 10 hits that the Queen had during the 1970s, but also his life with Freddie Mercury. This November, it'll be 30 years since Freddie passed away, but during those 45 incredible years that he was with us, Freddie became one of rock's greatest showmen. And I began my chat with Brian May by asking him how he and Freddie first met.
Well, I can tell you how we didn't meet, first of all, because it's very odd that Freddie spent his young childhood in Zanzibar, but his family moved over here to Feltham. And Freddie moved to a place, I was in Walsham Road, he was in Boundaries Road, just a little way away, actually probably about 400 yards away, and we never met. It's a very odd thing. But there we were, both growing up in Feltham and being influenced by very similar things. Both of us pretending to sleep and actually listening to Little Richard under the covers. And were inspired. He was inspired by Elvis, absolutely, and Cliff Richard, and also, just before I met him, Jimi Hendrix. And that's the time when we met. It's quite a while later. He came to see us play, and he'd go, "Oh, yeah, it's really good. I really like what you're doing, but, I could do better." And, he was never lacking in confidence as Freddie. But, Freddie is like an onion. You peel away the layers and you find different things. So on the surface, he was incredibly confident, as you've seen, as everybody's seen. Absolutely self-possessed and in control of his actions and his image and his behaviour, his interactions. But underneath that layer, if you peeled that layer off, you would find someone very shy and quite insecure. And if you peeled that layer off, I think you had at core someone who had an incredible self-belief somewhere buried deep, and it was hard for him in the beginning to find it. But I always see this kind of duality in Freddie. He knows he's great, and yet he fears he's not. So maybe that's a human thing, but Freddie had it in extreme. You could see that stuff working in him, that kind of unique chemistry. So the young boy who was very kind of self-conscious about his looks and his teeth and his hair and everything ends up being this great god on stage at Wembley Stadium and somehow communicates the fact that he's done this with himself to everybody in that stadium. All the people who are kind of shyly hiding at the back of the stadium feel this stuff coming from Freddie. I am like you. I'm shy. I'm insecure, but I have done this. This is what I've made myself. I think Freddie's just, he's hard to define, and yet he defines himself every time you hear him sing and you see him perform.
Bless his cotton socks. If we could just talk about some individual tracks and just memories of a hit was Seven Seas of Rye, number 10 in 1974. Can you remember the excitement of the fact that you had a top 10 hit? Was Freddie very excited about that, or was he quite cool about it, or what?
Yeah, we were all very excited, yeah. Having failed to achieve that with the first single, which we thought was brilliant, and a lot of other people had told us was brilliant. Keep Yourself Alive was the first one. But we couldn't get radio to get behind it. I'm sure you were. I think you were, because my mum used to tell me what you did. We were off on tour, and my mum would phone me up and say, "Johnny Walker's playing you." But very few other people were. Am I right? I don't think many other people played that record.
It was a great single. So it still is a great single.
Yeah, but they wouldn't playlist it, the BBC, because they said it takes too long to happen. There's too much introduction before we get to the singing. So Seven Seas of Rye, the kitchen sink comes in the first 5 or 10 seconds. You've got everything. You've got all the full harmonies, you've got guitar harmonies, you've got massive bangs, and then suddenly you're straight into the vocal on the first verse. So it was designed to kind of stick it to them, if you know what I mean. It was like, take this and tell us you can't play this on the radio. So it was fantastic. Yeah, great to see it in the top 10. We thought it would never happen, I think.
That's Queen and Seven Seas of Rye, which was a hit in the spring of 1974. And then later on, in the autumn of the same year, they followed it up with Killer Queen, which reached number 2 in the charts. And I wondered when chatting to Brian May whether they were finding it easier now that they'd kind of broken the ice with Seven Seas of Rye.
I don't know about easier, but it came, yeah, I suppose it was, the barriers were broken down and it was easier to get radio behind us. And we had a fantastic fan base, and it was great because we were fighting a lot of cynicism in the press and a lot of people trying to basically make out we were very trivial. So the fact that we had such a strong belief out there in the people, the actual people who buy the records and go to the concerts, that was our strength. And that's what kept us going. That gave us the power to just say, okay, who cares about what you say about us? We are what we are, and we'll do what we feel. And see you later.
Queen and Killer Queen, and we're paying tribute to the band and Freddie Mercury on this day, as it's exactly 75 years ago on this very day that Freddie Mercury was born. Brian May is guiding us through the hit singles of the decade, and I asked him if Bohemian Rhapsody was a group effort, or did Freddie have it all mapped out for them when he presented the initial idea for the song?
Oh, it was totally Freddie's baby. Yeah, all the harmony stuff he had all worked out. He had some note paper from his dad's works, which he used to scribble A's and B's and C sharps and D's on, because he'd worked them out on the piano. He worked all the chords out on the piano. So in those days, he would come in with it all prepared. It wouldn't look like charts. It's not like music charts like everybody else uses, but we had our language. We understood those A's and B's and C sharps. And in those days, that's what Freddie did. Later on, not so much. He sort of moved away from trying to plan everything. And very often in the later songs, he said, "Oh, Brian, you sort out the harmonies. You know, you tell us what to sing." I go, "Really?" But in Bohemian Rhapsody, he was there, and it was all in his head. And we just worked it like we used to call it a sausage machine. We'd play it on the piano, we'd all learn it, and we'd all sing it, the three of us. Then we'd sing it again, double track it, make sure it's in tune, probably triple track it, so you've got 9 voices already on one note. And then we'd go through and do all the different notes. So there's a lot of voices by the time you've finished. And we were using the multi-track, the new multi-track tape format to its full extent. And we actually, I guess, overused it. It was a 24-track machine, but we managed to wear it out, or wear the tape out. That's a story which has often been told, just because we were overdubbing so many times. And actually, honestly, because the machine was a bit faulty.
That's Queen and You're My Best Friend. These days, it's one of the most requested Queen songs on the programme. But at the time, it was a bit of a musical departure after the enormous success of their previous single.
Yeah, it was a hit. I think that was quite a surprise, because it was a much quieter little record than the huge Bohemian Rhapsody on that album. It's the Night at the Opera album. But it became very popular. I think it's very endearing to people. It's one of those records which triggers people's memories, I think. Their emotional memories of relationships and romantic moments. And it's Deaky's first hit. Deaky, we call him Deaky still, John Deacon, the quiet bass player who wrote the most enormous hits. That was pretty much the first one. He only wrote probably a dozen songs for Queen, but about half of those were hits. So that's a very good batting average for a writer.
Yeah, not bad at all. Now we're up to November 1976 and the 5th top 10 hit for Queen.
Somebody to Love is the well-known epic, isn't it? It's the follow-up, I suppose, to Bohemian Rhapsody in Freddie's mind, and we used the same multi-tracking vocal techniques, but this time, instead of being a sort of quintessentially English choir like we were in Bohemian Rhapsody, singing rather like this, Bismillah, now we're a choir. We've taken on the cloak of some kind of gospel choir to sing the harmonies for Somebody to Love. And Somebody to Love is really Aretha Franklin, and Freddie loved Aretha, and I think kind of wanted to be Aretha. So that her influence is very strong there. I wonder if she ever heard it. I never managed to find out if she did or not.
That's Queen and Somebody to Love. We're celebrating Queen's biggest chart hits of the 1970s. But a couple that weren't so big were Tie Your Mother Down and Good Old Fashioned Lover Boy. Queen, though, came back with a bang at number 2 in November, thanks to one of their defining singles.
We're the Champions and We Will Rock You as a pair of songs were born on the night we played Bingley Hall in Staffordshire one night. And the audience sang along to every song. When we went off stage at the end of the set, they sang You'll Never Walk Alone to us. And we pricked up our ears, really, and thought, we have been fighting this. We've been trying to play against people singing along and I guess kind of ignoring it because we don't think it's very cool. Look at it. They love it. That's what they want to do. They want to sing these songs. They want to be part of the band. So let's allow it to happen. Let's encourage it to happen. So Freddie went off and wrote We're the Champions. I went off and wrote We Will Rock You. And that's what you hear at the very beginning of the next album we made. And it was like an open invitation. I'm proud of what happened there. It was a real kind of inclusion thing to the audience. And it became kind of immortal for us. It's inseparable from Queen now. You couldn't have Queen playing in a concert hall with nobody joining in. It just wouldn't make sense.
That's Queen with Don't Stop Me Now. It was released as a single in 1979 and only got to number 9 on the chart and was dismissed by the band as a bit of a flop. I asked Brian if that was the reason why Queen never included it in their live sets after their 79 tour dates and then during the rest of Freddie's lifetime.
I don't know. I think there was a bit of reluctance. It didn't fit into the way we were on stage. It was rather light and fluffy, I suppose. And to be honest, there was probably some resistance from me because I never got it in the early days, I have to admit. I always found it was a sort of side of what we recorded that didn't translate very well onto stage. But how wrong was I? Because once it took its wings, it absolutely did. And we play it now with Adam Lambert and the place erupts. It's an amazing thing. Very, very much a song for the people. It's the song that everybody has at their stag night and hen night. And it's become one of the biggest songs in the catalogue.
And also a huge karaoke favourite as well. Now, Queen's big hit in November 79 was A Crazy Little Thing Called Love. And it's said that Freddie Mercury got the inspiration for writing the song after taking a bath in a hotel room in Germany. Is that true, Brian?
I wasn't actually in the room, but
No.
he certainly wrote it on acoustic guitar. Whether he was actually in the bathtub with the acoustic, I can't really vouch for. It's Freddie you hear playing it on the acoustic. That's not me playing the acoustic on Crazy Little Thing. Freddie was a very, very handy rhythm guitarist. He played very well. He's very fast with his fingers. And that's Freddie, what you hear. The only thing that I played on it is the electric bits and pieces, the little answering phrases and the solo, which is very James Burton. The whole thing is a bit of a kind of pastiche of an Elvis song. You know, recently, Johnnie, by accident, I stumbled upon this thing on the internet which says Elvis sings Crazy Little Thing Called Love, and it's incredibly well done. I put it on my Instagram. If anyone wants to check it out, check out Brian May for Real Instagram, and you'll find this track. And if I hadn't known, I would have sworn it was Elvis singing this song, and I would have thought, Freddie, you kept it from us all these years. It really was an Elvis track that you took over, you know. But no, he created it in that style because he loved Elvis, and I did the James Burton thing because I love James Burton. It's more James Burton than Scotty Moore, probably a little bit of each.
Did Freddie ever sort of make life difficult for you as a guitarist? Did he kind of elongate a song or change something or do something unexpected? Or do you pretty stick with a set list and stick with the arrangements of a song?
It's interesting you ask that. You know, was Freddie difficult in a sense? Freddie actually was incredibly not difficult in the musical world. I mean, privately, yeah, he could get upset at things and kind of, you could get into arguments with Freddie. But on stage and in music in general, in the studio as well. He was incredibly generous and understanding and sort of empathetic. So on stage, he was always part of the team, and he always used to say to people when they asked him, say, you're the leader of the band, Freddie. And he would say, no, I'm not the leader of the band. I'm the lead singer of the band. We're a band and we work as a band. So Freddie, he didn't have to be that way. And it's very kind of generous of him to take that attitude. But it's genuine. That's the way he worked and that's the way he was. He was a fantastic team member and he was also the icon absolutely for us. And I realised that very early on. He was that gift, the guy who could transmit everything to the audience and get it all across.
Freddie's probably got a very good view from where he is. But he must be surprised at all that Queen have achieved and done since he left us. I mean, it's quite incredible. He continued touring. There's a film. It's quite amazing that the Queen carried on when you might have thought that one of the biggest parts of Queen was no longer there, that might draw the curtain on it.
Well, the truth is we did draw the curtain. That's the funny thing. You're saying we carried on, but actually there was a long period where we didn't carry on and we didn't want to. And we didn't even want to talk about Queen. I think both Roger and I went through a massive grief process. Went off and toured on our own. I got the Brian May band together. I made solo albums and really didn't want to talk about it. It was too painful. And we felt it was over. I remember very distinctly looking at all these arenas like Madison Square Garden, the Forum, whatever, and thinking, I'll never do that again. And it was only much later that kind of by accident we got together with Paul Rodgers. It only happened because I did an awards show with him and we just got on like a house on fire. Then, out of the blue, comes this very pretty young boy called Adam Lambert, who can sing like a demon and has all the qualities that we seem to need. And so Queen was reborn in that sense, in a live way. But it wasn't planned. It wasn't like we thought that was the natural course of events. It just seemed inescapable once that guy was there. And we did a couple of shows with him and everybody said, you got to do this. He's your singer. This is great. So Queen and Adam Lambert became a force. And if it hadn't been for COVID, we'd be out there at this moment, Europe and the UK right this minute. It'll happen next year, hopefully, because we postponed the tour because of the dreaded disease.
So, Brian, Back to the Light is on reissue. Any particular reason you wanted to bring out this version of it?
Yeah, it was absolutely sunk out of sight. That's what really propelled me into it. I hadn't realised. I wasn't really paying attention. It only hit me when I was doing my Instagram stuff. I go on there and I do stories. I really took to Instagram during the lockdown because it was a platform I could play on Instagram, and I still do some of the time. So there I am. I'm putting up my story on Instagram, and you can choose from their library of tracks to put on your post. So here you put up a picture of you walking or whatever or something, and you put music on it, and you sift through this little library. There was none of my music on there. I wanted to put some of my own stuff, and I thought, I can't do that. Why can't I do that? So I thought, I'll ring up my record company and I'll ask them why people can't hear my records. And I discovered I didn't have a record company. Queen had a record company, but I didn't. So I talked to Andrew Dorr, who's the boss man in Universal, and we both of us decided over a meal in Tokyo that we had to re-release my solo work. So that's the story of how it happened. Once that decision was made, it was quite thrilling for me because I went back and I could polish all this stuff which had been dusty for years and years and remaster it, get all the package sorted out, find some lost tracks and put them on there. There's some rare tracks, so it's a second CD. And it was just a joy putting it all together. It was like a new album, and it still does feel like a new album, really. And it's gone from being a museum piece into being something which is a new product out there, and it's in the charts, which is great. So I'm very happy.
All right, you take good care, Brian.
You too. All the best, Johnny.
Lots of love, mate.